Hey, this is Lola, but you can call me Lola if you like.
Hi, this is Velisa, and you can call me Vels if you want. And this is the Everybody Hates HR podcast, episode 92.
This episode is brought to you by Dell.
As HR professionals, we know that managing HR for a workforce comes with its challenges. Managing a global workforce, even more so. Using multiple tools for different countries and worker types complicates everything. Costs go up and efficiency goes down. You get the picture.
Dell is here to change that. That's DEEL. Whether you're an enterprise business, a small company, or anything between, Dell simplifies global team management, payroll, hiring, and more.
Dell HR streamlines your global operations with built-in compliance to lower costs and maximize efficiency. With self-serve onboarding, new hires can be up and running in just minutes.
Sign documents, track expenses, and approve PTO in seconds. Plus, with Dell, you can easily oversee global cost reviews, headcount, and more with centralized reporting.
Ready to see how Dell HR can transform your global operations for free? Head to Dell.com to book a demo today. That's DEEL.com. And we have some very special guests with us today in the studio. We have Molly and Lauren from the Working On It podcast. Woo!
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. Welcome. We're super excited to have you.
Yeah. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourselves and then a little bit about the pod?
Sure, Molly.
Oh, you throw me in at first. Oh, shit. I was hoping you go first. So I'm Molly, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Flexa, which is a platform that enables people to search for companies by what they really care about. So, you know, when you go on Airbnb and you're like, I want a dog-friendly cottage with a hot tub, you put those filters on, and all those places come up. We do that for companies, but not hot tubs.
Shame.
Yeah, we've already talked previously about naked yoga. We're not getting in a hot tub with colleagues. So you could say, you know, I want to work from home 2 days a week. I want to bring my dog into the office when I do go in, and I would love to have, you know, adoption leave or fertility leave or other things that might really match your circumstances. And all the companies declare that information, and it's all verified by employees as being real. So no catfishing.
Oh, I really like that. It's like giving a wish list and then making it come true.
Exactly. So you get to, and you can like 15,000 filter combinations. So you can like test all the different bits. There's like free lunch in some companies, all sorts of weird benefits like work from anywhere schemes with an Airbnb voucher. Like there's all sorts of stuff.
I really like the idea of companies getting into a bit of a pissing contest of who's the we're the most flexible. Yeah.
That's like, literally what happens. Is what happens. Yeah. So we do the awards based on like how employees rate their employers, and we do something called the Flexa 100, which you came to this year, and it's like a big award ceremony for the 100 most flexible companies that we've got rated. And some of the companies are absolutely fuming that they're not in the top 10.
Oh, really?
This is like, but we should be.
I love that.
Competition. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. And then they get little trophies, and often when we then got on a call with our clients, they're like behind them, and they're like, yeah, we won.
I love that. Let's check out Flexa.
Yes, please do.
And I'm Lauren. I am a freelance brand consultant. I have been in brand marketing for years, and then I went freelance last year. But I came across Flexa actually because I was job hunting last year, and I was like, oh my God, you can filter by so much. And it was great. And then Molly and I met. We've known each other through LinkedIn for like a little while,
because you do all the TikTok influencing and then I do the LinkedIn influencing, so it's like
our paths
linked up to different platforms.
And then so the podcast, the kind of idea came about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and we were kind of put together as I think we'd be a good duo to host this podcast, and we were just saying we hadn't really met before we started. We'd kind of spoken, but the first kind of few episodes were us just getting even to know each other. So the premise of the podcast is to help kind of navigate, what's the official line? Help navigate the complexities of the modern workplace. Exactly. So I think I feel very much like I come at it with a view from what's the employee stance and Molly much more from the employer point of view. And we kind of tackle, you know, some serious conversation mixed with
The controversial ones as well. I think the ones that people don't like talking about.
Yeah.
So like, we talked about office romances, talked about getting fired.
I listened to both of those episodes and they're really.
I listened to the office romance one.
Yeah, and the one about getting fired. I think I really think it's so true that people don't talk about getting fired. It's like so taboo or like something that people should be ashamed of.
Yeah.
But most people have had an experience where they've been fired, whether that's or dismissed for some
redundancy,
reason.
firing. Like, so there's some form of like not voluntarily leaving a role in some way. Definitely, everybody's been through it. But I think some people feel embarrassed about it and like they can't talk.
I'm definitely seeing this. I don't know, maybe I'm just more awake to it, but seeing this kind of people owning that narrative a little bit more rather than being on the back foot. So yeah, there's I guess a mix of topics where some it is just advice that people are looking for, and there's some that they kind of almost didn't know they were looking for it because it's not spoken about as much.
We get a lot of people comment underneath and they were like, I didn't realise that this would feel like therapy to me. So they're listening to us talk about our different experiences or the experiences of people when they write in, or like our friends that that we've spoken to about these topics. And what's lovely to hear is that they are resonating with people, and they were like, well, I've never had this discussion, so like how you're having that discussion is how I would want to chat about it with someone, which has been a really nice feedback to get, because you sometimes wonder starting a podcast, and I'm sure you guys did as well, of like, does the world need this? Like, or are we just another bunch of people starting a podcast? And obviously for you guys, if you're 92 episodes in, like that's absolutely amazing.
To be honest, we're a bit different. I was like, the world needs us.
Lola's
I love that.
That's great confidence.
But to be fair, it was COVID and everyone was basically like losing. When I came up, like when I said it was like COVID and everyone was losing their jobs. So I was like, the world actually needs
this
HR help.
But you're like a little rebrand.
But I also think why you've got to 92 episodes is because there can be a tendency with work-related podcasts to go really serious and really dry.
Yeah.
And actually, because you're both coming with great personalities, that makes it so much more interesting to listen to, rather than where you get to a certain point you just zone out because you're like, oh, it's too
when
much.
I was listening to the podcast, working on it, how did I describe it?
You said they're another version of us.
I said the white version.
Yeah, you said the white version.
I love
Another version of us.
I love you just like censored yourself.
I did, being HR. I know we've got some dilemmas and stuff to go through, but as you were speaking, I have a question for both of you. So you said that people are owning, losing their job and being fired and stuff more. And I think it was the last episode where we spoke about the desperate banner on LinkedIn. And we're just open to work banners just being everywhere. I kind of feel like people feel like they don't really have a choice because they're out of work so long they can't even mask the fact that they didn't just resign. They've actually lost it.
And I wonder if previously I think because there's so many more redundancies in the market than we've, and I don't have any stats on that. That's just my survey.
No, it is.
There's more redundancies, right? So there's less shame in being open to work because the reasons why you might be open to work may have just something that's very much out of your control. Yeah. And I love that people are using it because I think the more we see, the more it normalizes it. Yeah. What's your take on that?
I completely agree with that. I think we saw it very much start during COVID when a lot of people were furloughed or they lost their jobs. And I think that to some extent being away from the workplace and at home meant that people felt that they could express themselves a bit more. And so it sort of took away that stigma because they didn't feel like they were being judged by somebody face to face. So it was more like when the interviews moved online, it was a bit easier to be able to broach those topics. And people started posting more about their lives, their work lives on social media as well. To your point, then it kind of normalizes it. And as soon as a few people start saying, just because I'm open to work does not mean I'm desperate, I got made redundant and I'm still great, it was part of restructuring, it was nothing to do with me. As soon as people start owning that narrative, I think it creates a societal shift.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like I was saying to Lauren before we started recording that I don't have any questions for her because I stalked her TikTok. So I've
actually been following you for like 6 months. I already know everything.
I was saying to Velisa, it really it highlights how much I share. I was like, shit, there's like nothing. I have no secrets.
I just found it really insightful. I remember when you were on the job search.
That's why I bring it up because we're talking about open to work, and it just reminded me that you even had like a list of companies that you'd interviewed with and what had happened, and
it's really interesting because actually since I've made that video about the companies that I'd worked at, I've actually spoke to a few people at those businesses, and I think there's this assumption that because I've been very open that I must have damaged all these relationships, and actually that's not been the case at all.
Did you ever get in trouble for anything?
No. One of them actually approached me about working together. One of them, I met someone I met at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we remember when you called us out." And he was like, "Yeah, fair enough. We hadn't decided on salary, which is why there was a whole shit show."
Oh, you mean the company that you were interviewing at?
Yeah.
Because I remember reading your comments, and I try not to engage. I try to be love and light, on LinkedIn and on TikTok, right? But when you're going through comments, you're like, shut up, man.
Oh, the comments are
you're
terrible.
never going to get it. Shut up.
But
shut up.
Yeah. And I think that's what people think about the open to work thing. It's like, well, the fact that you're available must mean, you can't be great if you're having to look for work, or, like this idea that everyone, you're only as good as if you're constantly in demand. I just don't think that's the case.
It's definitely not the case. Also, I think that's creates an enormous amount of bias, because the people that are the best at networking, that are the best at meeting those, making those relationships constantly, the phrase like always be interviewing. Not everybody wants to do that. That's exhausting. Like, it's okay to be happy.
It's not realistic at all.
No.
And I actually think it's not.
It's a full-time job looking for a job.
It's not even aspirational.
But we were saying, I think we've chatted about this in one of the episodes, because I was saying, for me, this notion of always interviewing, I think I'm, as a freelancer, because I'm constantly networking, that is my chance to almost...
Yeah.
Like,
but as a freelancer, you sort of have to do that.
I know, it's quite draining.
It's so draining. But I think, loads of people, the average tenure in a company is about 3 years. Imagine, getting into a job 6 months in, you're like, yeah, I'm loving it, it's great. And then you're like, shit, I need to be interviewing again. Even though I don't want to move.
It does take a lot out of you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's exhausting. And so I think if you're saying, oh, you're only good at your job if you're in demand, then you're naturally only leaning into the people that are thinking like that, which I don't think is often. That's not going to be women or people with children, people with other things that they have to do apart from think about the next role.
And also, if you're happy and you're settled, you're, being compensated well, why would you artificially just think, just be chasing another better thing? Like, the grass is not always greener.
But I think there's a bit of a damaging narrative around that sometimes, and we've talked about it before on social media, of like, you always deserve more, like you should always be given more. And I do think that then creates this sort of cycle of unhappiness, because it's like, oh,
always looking for something.
Maybe I'm underachieving if I'm happy, and maybe I could get more. And it's difficult for people to feel content, which is ultimately what we're all looking for, isn't it?
Or it creates this cycle of, I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
We had a dilemma similar to that at our live show, where someone basically said that before they didn't have the flexibility they wanted, and now they're in a new role. They think there is scope to grow. They're not growing as much as they could be, but they're actually really content in the role. Yeah. Like, should they move? It's like, why would you move? Yeah. Like, you're actually very happy. You think there's going to be scope for growth. Just like, be still.
Yeah.
And I think achievement goes over a period of time. Sorry, I just interrupted
you. No,
it's
fine. It's a question for you, so it's fine.
Achievement goes over a period of time. Like, you can be super, super career focused for a couple of years and give that everything, sacrifice flexibility, whatever. Then for a couple of years, you might be like, no, I just want to calm down a little bit. I want to focus a bit more on myself. And then you can come back to it. Like, you don't have to constantly be doing the same thing. Like, your achievement goes over 10, 20, 30 years, long careers.
Without putting you on the spot too much, with Flexa, do you see like certain core things that people are looking for? And is it usually something that's career driven or something that's to do with lifestyle and work balance?
It's actually, it's really not, it's a bit both.
Oh, okay.
But when people, so we can obviously see the search behaviour that people are doing, because they'll come on and they'll pick some filters and do a search. And so we see about 500,000 searches happen every month. So there's really interesting behaviour around that. And the first one that people always put on is a location-based one. Nearly always anyway. So they'll have some form of preference, whether it's like, I actually do want to go into the office every day. I want to go in 4 days a week, 3 days a week, 2 days a week, 1 day a week. I never want to go in. And then the next one is often more sort of cultural, around like, I would really value autonomy, or I'd really value a really... like progressive company, or really mission driven, or making a social impact. And then the third one could be completely random, like, I really want to bring my dog in, or I really want enhanced parental leave. So we usually get those 3 buckets on pretty much every single search, which is really interesting.
I find that interesting.
Parental leave is like, if you're interested in becoming a parent, it's so important. It, like, for me, it's just, I'm not surprised that it is one of the top filters.
Yeah.
Even if you're not, you just want to know that if you ever get there, there'll be an option for you. And I think it says a lot about the company. Do you care about me, or do you want me to shake my baby on the street to pay my rent?
Yeah, and being transparent about it.
Those are the options.
Being transparent about it shows that the company is family friendly as well, right? Rather than keeping it behind the scenes.
And trying to look for it and search.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I think there's this common misconception that by being open about things like parental leave or about flexibility, people are going to come and exploit that, which is actually like such a minority. It's really the best people that will prioritize those things because they can and because they've got choices. So by being open, you're more likely to get high quality talent, not loads of people that are drifters and just want to have babies and leave again.
Yeah. Literally. I hate when people hide certain policies, like employers, and it's like, why do I have to go on Glassdoor and it might not even be that accurate?
Like, eke it out.
Yeah.
I'll go through the comments trying to see like what
just put it on your website.
I had someone the other day message me. Actually, you 3 of you will be able to answer this far better than I could. But she was saying how she's interviewing at the moment, and at what point does she ask to see like the maternity leave information? And I kind of, my advice back to her, I hate sharing this because I'm thinking, oh, you're all going to go, that's terrible. But I was like, actually ask if there's an employer handbook with all of the kind of documentation around to see that. Because is there a stigma of people going, oh, she's asked about maternity leave?
But if you're dropped from the interview process straight after that, then you can bring discrimination as well.
Oh.
Yeah, but I always think, even if they don't drop you, even if they take you through or whatever, I always just think, it depends on your situation at the time. If you know that you've got options, like, we have to be practical. If you know you've got options and it's actually important to you what the maternity or the paternity or adoption or whatever leave is like, then just ask for it directly. Yeah. If they treat you like poorly for doing that, then clearly
it's not the company for you. Yeah.
But if it might be the case that you've been out of work for a long time, you don't want to rock the boat, you might just say, you know what, I'll just eat this one and I think
that's really good advice.
Yeah, but it just depends where you are. I'm not going to say, just ask them up front, because if you've been looking for a job for 6 months and you're at the end of your overdraft, then
that'll be too picky.
It's true.
Yeah, and there are different ways you can ask about it. I think that advice is actually really good.
But also, does that change anyway because of the stuff that's coming out around day one, rights from day one?
Still quite ambiguous, isn't it?
It is. I thought we'd have more clarity today, but no.
I was trying, you're trying to make sense of something and you're like, if it's taking me this long, it really must be full of rubbish. But effectively there'll be day one rights, but it's likely that it's just the statutory or unpaid. So it's not that the company has to give you the enhanced.
Got you. Okay.
Which also wouldn't be fair on the company to be able to have to do that either. I think that's particularly small businesses. And that's what a lot of people are saying about what is likely to come in, is it's really hard for small businesses to handle.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying, like, we were talking about it. Lisa, what kind of maternity policy do you have? And I was like, I have a statutory maternity policy because I genuinely, my company is 3 of us, and I can't afford anything else. I would hope that, hopefully if we got that, I would be able to do something else, but I couldn't commit to doing that at the moment until we have the scale that would support something else. And I would then be transparent about that and say, actually, what I could do is I can offer flexibility in loads of other ways, which is where we are at the moment. That's what the situation is,
which is completely reasonable. And there's a stage, like, we were exactly the same when we started, and then since we've gotten a little bit bigger and we had somebody go on mat leave, and now we're like, okay, well, we can test what happens here. And then we did 3 months fully paid as well as statutory. But then, I've had people comment when I was talking about it on TikTok and they were like, that's not very good. I was like, we're a startup. Like, what do you want from me?
Literally 2 salaries at the same time.
Yeah, it's just not practical. And I do think sometimes, like, people are just a bit not wise to
common sense isn't that common.
It's not that, and also they just don't understand what it means to be they think as soon as you're a business owner, you're a mogul,
rolling in it.
Standing shoulder to shoulder. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, the concept of money in general on social media is just
so skewed.
Warped.
I love and I hate TikTok for that reason exactly. Like, TikTok is just I can just be on TikTok just laughing for like a full hour, or I can just be there lamenting at like how stupid people.
It just doesn't make sense. Like, sorry to sound like a stalker again, but you did. What did
I do?
You did your salary throughout the years and your different job roles, and like all the comments were like, "Oh, well, that was a lot of money," and like, you know, oh, I think you got more, and people are like, why would you like complain about that? Like, it's a good salary, and I think it was like halfway through and people were already complaining, and you got all the way to 6 figures and people were like, well, like, why don't you just stick with that?
I think the whole salary like conversation is so interesting because one, we're nosy, right? So you always want to see, but I think it kind of helps, from me, my point of view, it helps to talk about it because it shows potentially what you can earn, but also it just normalizes talking about salary in that situation anyway. But yeah, I think a lot of people are like, you can't complain that you weren't paid enough, and I'm like, no, I'm not complaining that I wasn't earning enough. I'm complaining that I wasn't paid fairly versus my colleague, which is very different.
But that's the difficulty with sometimes talking about salaries, like people take it out of context, and even if you are discussing it with 2 co-workers and then someone's like, oh, I have the same title but I'm paid a bit less, like you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes in that context, and sometimes it is genuine pay disparity which needs to be called out, but sometimes there is
it's
more
experience,
to it.
Isn't it? It's like whatever salary, like whatever job title, there's a band, there's always a like band, isn't there? It's like, are you entering into that level, or have you experienced it?
And also sometimes it's very hard for people to benchmark themselves against their peers. They think they're like, oh, me and Lauren and Molly, we all do the same job, but we all perform the same, but you're not delivering upwards, so you don't know what the delivery is like. It's not that transparent.
Self-awareness is a skill.
It is. A lot of people do not have it. They don't have it. So that's a good segue into our first dilemma. We're all family here, so it does say hi Lola and Vels, but we're going to answer this together. So it says, hi Lola and Vels, I hope you're both keeping well. I recently stumbled across your podcast and absolutely love it. So many practical insights and learns to help navigate through the corporate world. I usually listen to your podcast on my runs. How inspiring, because I
actually think that kind of behaviour is barbaric. How can you listen to a podcast while you're running?
You need
I can't
music.
even breathe. I just listen to music. But I love that for you.
The tempo of that run must be all over the place.
You can see they're a very good runner.
I'm looking at going for a promotion in a different team at my company, but have zero insights on the potential salary range. I don't even know where I lie on the pay band, MRP in brackets, for my current role. Would I be crazy to straight up ask my HR business partner what quartile I'll lie in on the MRP scale? Of course, under the guise of development, etc. My manager is tight-lipped, but I want to make sure I don't do myself a disservice if I get this new role, which is at a higher career grade. Thanks.
What's an MRP?
I'm so glad you asked that.
I thought it was a pay. I think I'm just going to call it pay band.
Yeah, I'd assume it's like the pay grades of different.
No, well, just be clear, we don't know everything. It feels very internal.
I was like, do I ask?
I'd assume it's a pay grade, like different seniorities.
Yeah. I assumed it was to do with teaching, you know. I might be wrong.
Are we Googling it?
I'm just gonna we'll go pay band.
Anyway
you want pay band.
And then we might be giving completely useless advice.
But there we go. That's what you're gonna get. What you're gonna get.
Yeah, I mean, MRP, according to Google, is material requirements planning, so it might be the industry and stuff that he's in. I don't know.
Pay band.
Okay, fine.
Pay band.
Okay.
I would say it was a smart move to speak to HR and ask that, right? Because they're the people that are going to be able to tell you that.
Yeah, and it can be asked politely and inquisitively. Like, I've just out of interest, it'd be great to know this for my progression and where I can end up. It doesn't need to be a bullshit. I want to know how much I'm being paid in the future.
Yeah, because he wants to know where he sits at the moment in terms of the pay band, and
to know if there's an increase, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think he should ask. I think asking HR is fine. I do know that there are some HR people there's some companies that won't tell you. Yeah.
Why is that?
Usually, I think skeptically, it's because there might be some disparity which they don't want to expose. But because I don't see any other benefit in keeping that information from you. I that's what I would always assume, that it might expose other disparities, or because everybody will ask. And also, I think the other thing from a HR perspective is that sometimes people might be happy with their pay and it might even be commensurate with the job that they're doing. But hearing the quarter that they sit in can completely shift your mindset.
Yeah.
So if someone tells you, oh yeah, you earn 50k and you're in the top quartile of what you could be paid, you're thinking, yeah. If someone tells you, based on your performance, and if someone tells you you're in the bottom quartile, you might have been happy with 50k and it might actually be commensurate with the job that you're doing. But hearing that you're in the bottom quartile is going to completely shift your mindset.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It also really varies across teams, and people might see, oh, I'm ahead of just the same as that person over there, when actually the team performance is different. The average pay within that team because of the role is different, and it just starts to
Different functions.
exactly like engineering obviously going to be very, very different to marketing, for example. Like the pay is just completely different. It might open up a can of worms.
I got into the wrong industry.
Don't see you as a dev.
Not in the slightest.
I do think it's a bit frustrating though, because so in HR, you can, even if someone doesn't want to tell you your banding, you have access to the systems where you can find out yourself. It's one of the
perks.
Yeah, literally. And like to your point, Lola, it's just that some HR people just don't want to give that sort of transparency to it. But yeah, I do think you should speak to HR. But also, if you have a good relationship with your manager, if you know there's someone that's transparent about your development, your career.
His manager was tight-lipped.
Oh yeah, you're right.
I think you're better off. I think you would be more likely. The HR would be more likely to tell you what the range for the role is than tell you where you sit in the.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, because they may not necessarily know.
Yeah,
But then you can work it out yourself because you know what your salary is, and then if they give you the range, then
So I think if they say this is the range for the role you're going to go to, I think it's unreasonable to expect someone to really go for a role if they don't understand at least what the banding is. So I think that would be a better question to ask, and then think about where you would feel comfortable being. And that's the other part here. Like sometimes people want to know. I get not wanting to undersell yourself, but a big part of it is also where are you going to be comfortable? Where will you be happy? Because it shouldn't always be about
go for the highest.
Yeah, but I want to get paid as much as Velisa.
Yeah.
You need to have that number in your head.
That you're comfortable with. I think first just figure out what your number is, and then I think it'll be easier to move forward.
Yeah.
It's annoying that you have to kind of have these conversations.
I know, it feels like such a little kind of merry little dance we have to play, isn't it?
Can I ask you a question actually as a freelancer, especially like in creative? When a client approaches you, do you ask them what the budget is? Or do you give them your...
I give them my...
Okay.
Yeah. So some of the work I've done has been day rate, but most of the work is project fees. So that's been really... and it's been... What I've noticed even more so in the freelancing world is people talk about day rates and things even less than salary ranges in kind of permanent roles. So that's been really interesting to navigate. But yeah, I always kind of... if they brief me on something, I kind of put together a cost rather than ask what the budget is.
I much prefer that kind of project work where it's like, you don't need me online at this time, as long as I deliver to you.
Yeah, deliverable based.
Yeah, because I think you're
so much better.
You're buying my experience and what I'm delivering, and my time's not irrelevant, but what you're buying is what whatever I'm delivering, whether I work at midnight till 2 a.m. or from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. It just gives me the flex as well.
I find that clients like that as well. Like even in the HR work that we do, if there's a little bit of like uncertainty or whatever in the business, because then they don't end up paying for dead time, because they'll be like, oh yeah, we're going to get the data to you by Monday. You're online. If you're on day rate, you're online on Monday, it doesn't come. You're online Tuesday, it doesn't come. They're paying you just to sit around and do nothing.
Yeah, I have had a couple of incidents. I only think two days out of however many days I've done on a day rate, where it's like, okay, I'm waiting for maybe feedback on something and that feedback hasn't come, and it's like, well, I can't take that, so but I'm still getting paid.
Yeah, you always bill for that time, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I have another dilemma. So this one says, hi ladies. Firstly, want to say I'm a recent and big fan of the pod and love the work you are doing. I hope to make it to your next show. I wanted to ask if you could discuss possible options for workers like myself in the tech space who find themselves having to return full-time to the office. My company, Dell, announced on Thursday, effective Monday, that all employees had to return to office 5 days a week. At the time of joining, my contract stipulated a hybrid working schedule, and now I'm considering legal action, as well as requesting additional compensation. Amazon have recently introduced this policy and were nice enough to give their employees decent notice. And I've heard rumours other tech companies will follow suit. So I feel listeners may benefit from your perspective on this too.
When you're being compared to Amazon and Amazon is a better option,
Yeah.
Then you know you're bottom barrel.
The barrel has been scraped.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting one because we are definitely seeing a rise in this like back to the office mandate, right? And there's a lot of conversation online about is it a disguised way of getting rid of people
Which
because they know
definitely
that
has
people
been at
leave.
some companies. Like it was at X because he said everybody had to come back to the office. Loads of people left, and then he said now they're hybrid. So that was a pretty thinly
Terrible.
veiled.
I think he's just not. He's just not
He's
okay.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the return to office thing is a really thorny topic because it's incredibly divisive. Like, really, at the end of the day, it is the right of the company to do that. Whether or not that makes sense is a completely different question. And so I think it's very tricky. And it's like using the words like, not that this person did, but lots of people say like, it's unfair, they can't do this or whatever it is. The fact that it was a hybrid contract does make it much trickier,
Yeah.
but often because of your place of work, and there probably will be some class legal action out of the back of that. But when people are like, they can't do it, it's unfair, it's like, well, you don't have a right to flexible working, but you do have a right to choose where you work. And that's sort of the way that I always think about it, is like companies doing the full RTO will face the consequence of that because they will lose great talent, and a lot of that talent is going to be diverse talent because of the nature of flexibility. That will have knock-on effects to their performance, so they will face the repercussions of it. But it's horrible to be stuck in that at the time and feel like, shit, what do I do? I can't return to the office 5 days a week, or I really, really don't want to. Hence why after the Amazon announcement, I think it was something mad, like 27,000 people had their open to work banner on as a result of it.
That's crazy.
I can't remember exactly what the stat was.
They must want, like, in that case, you must know it's going to lead to like attrition.
Yeah,
they know it.
100%.
They know it. They know it definitely.
I mean, on a much smaller scale than Amazon, but I remember, God, it must be 6 months ago now. The MD of Boots announced that, you know, from September, everyone at head office was due about 5 days a week. And it was really interesting then. I kind of was seeing a lot of people from Boots then kind of go on LinkedIn and go, actually, that doesn't work for me because, you know, I accepted a role where, you know, I was maybe going in once or twice, and it's the commuting time, it's the cost of commute, all these things that when they accepted the job weren't a factor. That now it's not just a case of, I think the MD at the time was something like, I don't know about you, but that works for me. And it's like,
yeah,
there was no consultation in the business, and he's now left, but it's like there's no consultation with, like what the fuck.
It's horrible having something done to you,
yeah,
and it's not explained. And
I think that's the biggest problem is the reasoning behind it. Like saying you want people to collaborate more is not good enough reason for people
to do that
to
3 days a week.
Exactly. Like what is the real reason? Tell us the truth.
Yeah, and I think that's what's the struggle, isn't it? Who can any of us name one business that have announced a return to work mandate with anything that feels like, oh, that makes sense.
Because there is like, I think most of it is not underpinned by like real data. There are companies that have shown like a reduction in productivity, but I reckon, and this is just my own kind of gut feeling, that is probably down to a smaller number of people that do take the piss. And we know there are people that take the piss, and it's like, rather than kind of weed out those people, find those people and deal with those people, it's like now everybody has to suffer.
But what I don't understand is, like, before working from home, people took the piss. Like, it's not people taking the piss at work is not exclusive to working from home.
I do think that it's not exclusive, but people, it's like while the cat's away, do you know what I mean? When people, unfortunately, if you're thinking about like, you know, theory Y versus theory X, like some employees, genuinely, some people are just piss takers, and they'll get away with as much as they can get away with. And when you're at home, it's much easier to get away with things. And like, we've all heard stories, and we've all probably know people who have taken the piss when they're working from home, and especially in HR, there are stories of what people have done when they are supposed to be working.
Been working another job.
So the reason I don't think I could ever work in HR is because I don't think I could trust myself to not gossip about the things that I would hear. Because you must see,
you just do it with
you do it with other HR people. Yeah,
the things
within the
you must see. things you must see.
Who was it? I think I can't remember who. I think it might have been you, Molly, on one of the episodes. Just like, I wish I worked in HR. I'd love to work in HR. I can't remember. Somebody said it. It might have been Lauren. I can't remember, but somebody said it, and I remember thinking, yeah, don't worry. It's exactly how you imagine it to be.
It is.
Yeah, I think they do. I think being on a hybrid contract is. I do think that's a bit unfair.
Yeah.
Like, when I say unfair, I mean, I genuinely mean, like, this is not what you signed up for. Whereas when I hear people who were working 5 days a week and have not signed a contract which stipulates that
and then they've moved away, miles away.
I've spoken
she has.
It's a pet peeve of mine. It's like, you were working 5 days a week into the office. You got nothing ever changed in your contract. You moved an hour and a half down the road. Now they're asking you to come back to the office, maybe even 2 to 3 days, and you're saying you live too far.
That's a you problem.
That's a you problem. So I do think hiring somebody and stating categorically that they will have the ability to work on a hybrid basis and then changing it is it's just wrong. Like, it's, in theory, it would be a breach of contract because forcing them to
somebody
do
will have
something
to
else.
re-sign another contract. Yeah,
exactly. But I think for everyone else, it just is what it is. Dell was the company in the US who did that thing, isn't it?
Yep. Dell are the ones who said they want people to come to the office, and if you do, you'll still be eligible for promotions and stuff like that. But if you want to stay at home, everything stays.
Was that just in the US, or was that everywhere? I can't remember.
I thought it was global, but it might have just been the US, and you can stay at home. But most people in Dell, they're on six figures. Like, they
obviously didn't work.
Yeah, like 80% of them were like, I'll stay at home then. Like, it's cool.
When I want to get a promotion, I'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, like it's fine. And now they're saying 5 days a week. But for me, the tech companies doing it confuses me, because before COVID happened, a lot of them were already hybrid. Like, before COVID, I wasn't in the office 5 days a week. So it's a bit confusing that now they're going to the other extreme of being in 5 days a week, particularly after you have seen that people have done their job at home for the last 2 years, and now you're saying they can't even do 1 day at home. You have to explain that properly. Like, it doesn't make sense.
I genuinely think a lot of this always, like, sometimes comes down to one person or one group of people who just have a bit
who hates their wife
or like
and wants to come in.
walking around the office thinking, why is that one CEO walking around saying, why is no one in the office today?
But it's like, it's CEOs that just want to swing their dick around and look like, look around at, like, what
they've
that scene of The Lion King where it's like everything the light touches. It's like that, isn't it? It's like an ego thing, because there's nothing, or maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it's no evidence that says, is there?
There's no evidence that says,
get my research out.
There is no evidence that says that in-office working is the most productive, but like any study, everything is an average. So to your point, there are companies that can point to the fact that not being in the office every day has impacted their productivity and it's gone down. But the reason for that is because distributed working, whether that's hybrid, whether that's remote first, whether that's fully remote, is harder, but you get more out of it. Like, you have to be more intentional about catch-ups. You have to be more intentional about the kind of work that you're doing on each day. Exactly. Like, giving feedback remotely is so different to in person. Like, it is harder, but there are so many upsides, whether that's employee engagement, happiness, for the ones that do it right, massive productivity increase, diversity, all sorts of things. But if you look at it in averages, effectively, the larger scale study suggests that in the office every day and hybrid, let's say it's just at least once a week, have about the same productivity on average. But in hybrid, employee engagement, happiness, etc., is much higher. Then you go to remote, and the productivity does drop slightly, and so does engagement and happiness, but diversity increases, cost saving is obviously massively increased, and the ability to hire is massively increased because supply
barriers are removed,
and demand massively outstrips supply. So when people fight, and the media love binary discussions, they're like, it's in office versus fully remote, but actually the majority of us will probably exist in that grey area in the middle somehow. And there's no right or wrong answer, because depending on company culture, depending on how you're set up, depending on how much effort you're willing to put into a distributed team, that's how much you're going to get out of it. So I think it's super difficult to have the really binary discussions.
I just think, like, who's the chief people officer or whoever at Dell, because
they must be crying.
Yeah, it will just be like such a hospital pass to be like having to deliver that message if you don't believe in it. Imagine you work at Dell, you've chosen, you can choose where you work, but you can't necessarily choose what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you've chosen to work at a company which allows you to work. Specifically, you've chosen that company if you joined after COVID.
And it's in your contract
and
that it's hybrid.
It's in your contract. You've got to pick up your child or drop your child off. They're telling you to come in on Monday. Sorry, who's picking up my child? Like, it literally, it's kind of assuming that there will be somebody else. You'll have an extended family or a partner or somebody. Who is going to pick up my child? Like
that lack of consideration of the impact.
Notice.
Yeah, that's
the week's notice is bananas.
That's harsh.
A lot of the ones that have announced it's more like there's 3 months or 6 months. So then, which I think is reasonable because then you've got time to adjust to it. But a week's notice,
find a new job.
Yeah, shit, dust
exactly.
off the CV.
Either you accept it or you go find a new job.
Enough time.
But I know everyone can't do it, but then this is where I feel like people should utilize flexible working requests more in the UK. Like, just at least try. Like, if you work for a decent company, you should at least try to apply for it and then see what happens. And maybe you can't go back to being remote, but maybe you can do 4 or 3 days in the office rather than the full 5, but just try.
I think a lot of people don't know about the fact that they can submit flexible working requests, even though it's been like this year, especially like since you can do it from day one, more in the media. A lot of people just don't know that they have that option. They'll ask informally, and then when their manager says no, they won't like, or when there isn't the right amount of enthusiasm, they just kind of drop it. And a lot of companies have really dealt with them quite poorly. Like, the culture of the company is so important.
It is.
When you've got a good company culture, you do things properly. You actually try to make an effort to, accommodate people.
And you don't make people make those really formal requests.
Because they could have just had that conversation with you. But then when you have bad company culture, you do anything, you say, oh, sorry, business need, we can't do it. Like, and Labour is basically, was talking last week, but Labour saying that if you want to deny a flexible working request, that you would have to actually give a real reason.
Yeah.
But there's 8 reasons and they're pretty vague. It's like, would impact performance. It's like, well, that's what everyone's going to say.
That's a bullshit reason.
Yeah. But it would be interesting because that reason, for instance, you can't really, a lot of the companies wouldn't be able to use it for people they're trying to get back to the office because my performance has been great. Unless they're trying to say that your performance in the office would be better. I say it's not, because I would actually hate being
It would dip.
And so would I.
Literally. Okay, so this one is all about occupational health. I think it's another acronym, so it's OHA. So I've assumed it's OH, but I'll read it.
Occupational Health Assessment.
Yeah.
I've gone through it.
So it says, hi, I would love some HR advice. Thanks in advance. I work in HR as a people partner, so feel like I know UK employment law quite well, but my employer is gaslighting me. Fair. I'm currently going through the motions with disability discrimination with my employer. I had to file a grievance last week as there's been a bunch of bad things that have happened, and I have a solicitor representing me. My employer strongly feels that an employee has to request an OHA, but I've said a few times I don't feel that's the case. What is your experience around OHA? I know that with the ER cases I have dealt with, we, the employer, have always suggested OHA when it comes to performance or absence concerns as a safety measure. But my employer is now saying that an employee has to request it, which I'm 99% sure isn't true. Is that correct?
I'm so confused. If that's what they're saying, why didn't she just request it? I don't think it's correct.
I don't think she wants it. I don't think she wants it, from what I understood.
I think she does, but she's basically saying, why haven't they done it for her?
The employee doesn't have to request it. It can be forced.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even want it.
Yeah.
I think she's basically saying that they haven't done one for her. Why haven't they kind of supported her? That's what it sounds like. Very confusing. But yeah, you definitely don't have to request it.
But also, we're saying there's also discrimination claim there as well.
I feel like just
been a grievance.
Yeah. And has a solicitor.
At the point where we have grievance and a solicitor, really truly, you'll never come back to this place to work. So you can. That's very public sector, to like sue your employer and stay. They're the strongest soldiers. But in most cases, it's too hard. Once you've got your
you've gone too far.
Why would you keep going?
It's too hard.
Like, you don't need the OHA assessment at this point because you've already gone so far.
To have it, because if then they say you should be classified as disabled, or this is a genuine extenuating circumstance, and then the company continues to not make accommodations, then you can say, well, I was forced out, and then that actually is a claim.
But then at that point, just go and get one yourself, and then have that as part of your evidence, because at this point asking them to send you to occupational health is just...
But I think if she genuinely wants to stay, which she might, whether or not it's going to be successful. Yeah. But if she genuinely wants to stay, I think sometimes the occupational health assessment is there to say, okay, I can stay if you do these things. And it's not just me saying I want these things. Somebody, a medical professional or a professional is saying it. So you might say, I want to work remote, and they're saying, no, you don't need to. But once an occupational health advisor or assessor says, yeah, actually would be beneficial for Velisa or whatever to work at home, then if they say no, then they're actually going against advice at this point, and then it just
it can be discrimination.
Yeah, exactly. It looks so bad.
And then I feel like a grievance would have been appropriate. I feel like
there's a lot missing from the story. I can't lie to you.
It kind of feels like the meme. You know the meme of the dog in the hat in the kitchen surrounded by flames?
Yeah. Everything's okay.
There's a whole lot going on.
There's no good avenue here.
I also don't like occupational health. I don't.
Do you know? Okay.
I just feel like they just do whatever the employee says, and it gets on my nerves.
The issue with occupational health, as a concept,
it's good.
In terms of how good it is or not, it's very. It depends on the context, right? Because a lot of the time, occupational health gets involved when you have long-term. This is HR view. When you have long-term sickness and you're trying to figure out like how to manage or work with this employee. But a lot of the time, they don't really do any investigation. They're really just having a conversation with the employee. So if the employee is being honest, you get a good report back and it'll be helpful. If the employee is not being honest, there is no way to, they don't do any medical assessment. If you say, I'm too fatigued to come to work,
they'll say, okay.
They'll just write that down.
Yeah. We had an occupational health doctor in Ireland when I was at Meta, and he was known for making our lives hell. He just loved letting the employees do what they want. It would be, this person shouldn't be in for the next 3 months, and it's just what are you doing over there?
3 months.
Why do you hate us? But they just do what they want. I think it's really hard to find good occupational health that's actually objective and looks at things in a very factual way, and not just an employee coming in and crying and saying, because my manager's my manager, that's why everything's falling apart, knowing that we've already told them that no matter what, this is going to be your manager going forward. And then they'll go and say something like that, and then the recommendation is I hate the recommendation.
The recommendations, they are they're never commercial recommendations.
Never.
It'll be let's say you have one HR team, and the recommendation will be maybe we should have a different manager. Who is going to manage her?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If there is a big HR team, fine. But if there's two of you and so you're going to put maybe the head of marketing could manage the HR.
Yeah, that advice is
it'll be crazy. It'll be crazy. Crazy advice that sometimes doesn't make any sense. And that's what it is. I just think I understand what they're there for, and I think if everyone was honest, they'll be great. But because it doesn't always work like that.
Yeah, I had a pretty mixed experience with it because in my second job, I was in investment banking. This is on our getting fired one.
Yeah,
I've been fired 150 times. I haven't actually. Been fired twice.
That's why she's in business.
But they sent me to occupational health because I was really sick and my feet kept swelling up, my face, my hands. So it really hurt to get into an office. And I was asking to work from home 1 day a week. So I think they sent me as a precaution one day.
So reasonable.
I was in 6 days a week working 16-hour days, and it wasn't
crazy.
So they sent me, and actually the guy did do much more than just listen to me moan about it. He was actually properly looking into it, and there was actually an assessment there, which was interesting. And he then said my recommendation basically, and I got sent it afterwards because of the discrimination stuff that happens afterwards. He was just let her work from home 1 day a week. She can still work. It's fine. There's no other accommodations that need to be made. And although he was great, the actual occupational health assessor, then that information was used to then say, basically, we now know that this girl has a disability and we don't want her here anymore. So I lost my job because of that. But if they hadn't sent me, so they sort of shot themselves in the foot, because if they hadn't sent me, then they wouldn't have had the proof of disability, so then they could have gotten rid of me without giving me a settlement package. So it worked well in terms of me getting out of that situation and being paid to leave, but going meant that they had the grounds to do that.
But you know what, I think it was the fact that it was an investment bank told me that they actually have some money. Yeah. Because not all occupational health companies are the same. No. Some are great and they're expensive and some are not. So it's you can literally get occupational health assessment for 69 quid or something.
And they're the ones fucking with you.
Yeah.
For £69, what will you do? What could someone pay you to do for £69? There's nothing you could do. You have to write, like, there's nothing you can do for that kind of, they're saying, oh yeah, you can get an occupational health assessment for £69, you know, and up. They're rubbish.
Yeah.
So that's why I think there's the kind of disparity, because some companies are really good, some are not, some employees are honest, some are not. So you get a very mixed bag.
Yeah. So those were all our dilemmas, ladies. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having us. This has gone so quickly.
Thank you.
Tell us about working on it. Where can we find you?
Yeah.
On the internet.
Yeah.
It's like, what's up?
At workingonit.pod.
On TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn.
And YouTube.
And YouTube.
Which Molly found out today we have a YouTube channel.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she didn't. I was like, "Oh, you on YouTube?" And Lauren was like, "Yeah," and Molly was like, "Oh, he?"
We're everywhere,
Who puts it
apparently.
on YouTube? Who puts it on YouTube?
I know we don't do any of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fairy Tale Productions. Okay, yeah. So they just done it. I love that for you.
Lola's very envious.
We are
We
incredibly
edited the first
fortunate.
episode recently. And
I did in the
now
2 years. Yeah,
Now we both edit.
I wouldn't want to try and edit the shite.
it's not that bad,
we've
you
got
know.
there. Like,
It's okay.
I'm so glad you said that on camera, because when I do,
Yeah. Next time you
she's like,
mask
oh,
it.
I'm never doing this again.
Yeah, it was horrible for me, but it's okay.
It's the kind of thing that
Traumatic.
the more you do it, the more. But also with YouTube, you must know your rhythm of like how you.
It's not that there's not that much to edit.
Yeah, it's fine.
Before we were probably a bit more diligent. Oh, we need to get rid of that. Now it's like you're gonna get what you get.
Yeah. It's all good. I was saying that, you know, when I'm like, I need to get home to watch Love Island, so we've got 45 minutes and we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Those are the best episodes, Snappy.
They are, yeah. But yeah, no, thank you. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much for having us.
yeah, thank you very much for having us.
Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff.
That's a wrap, guys. Bye.